We're reading two statements. We're reading one statement as the General Secretary of the PPP and one as the former Home Affairs Minister. So I'll invite him to proceed.
Thank you. The first statement reads as follows. As former Minister of Home Affairs, I feel obliged to respond to an editorial published in the Starbuck News of July 9, 2015 under the caption, "Not Guyanese." The editorial, in my opinion, was written with the intention to sugarcoat the poor management of the security sector by Public Security Minister of the David Granger de facto administration. Allow me to address certain aspects highlighted in the editorial. Firstly, the Starbuck News described the former Minister of Home Affairs as, quote-unquote, not that wise in his criticism of Mr. Ramjatan's decree to stop the sale of alcohol at 2 a.m. Is this the way of describing the hundreds, if not thousands, of Guyanese who are opposed to this anti-Guyanese decree? If that is the case, then regrettably, the logic of this warped view is that a huge number of Guyanese are not that wise. This is an insult to those Guyanese. What a shame. Further, the Starbuck News editorial sought to shelter the new government in general, and Ramjatan in particular, from, quote, facing the brunt of the PPP's caustic remarks, end of quote. As regards the mishandling of citizen security by drumming up sympathy for Ramjatan while shunning the real issue at hand. Whether or not Ramjatan faces the brunt of caustic PPP remarks is not the issue. And in any case, why shouldn't he? Especially since he's not up to the job. Further, it is neither fair nor balanced for the Starbuck News to be apologetic nor to be in concubinage with any government minister, especially in Mr. Ramjatan's case, given his failure to put forward a progressive and comprehensive citizen security plan like the PPPC did. Mr. Ramjatan should draft one, consult with the relevant stakeholders, including the National Commission for Law and Order, take it to Cabinet for consideration, and if approved, have it published after sending it to law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders for implementation. But no, quite the opposite has happened. Instead of presenting a draft strategy to Granger, his boss, Granger presents one to Ramjatan and instructs him, like the dutiful servant, to go refine it and implement it. We look forward to learning whether Ramjatan's latest proposal for a dog and pony show will find favor with the security experts ensconced at the presidency. But back to the 2 a.m. curfew. It is not for Ramjatan nor any media house to advocate the curtailment of the freedom of any Guyanese, nor to seek to alter long-held customs and morals of law-abiding Guyanese, or for that matter, the nation as a whole. The nation would recall, when both the AFC and APNU were in the opposition, they serenaded the people about all the brilliant and unassailable plans they had as solutions to the crime situation in our country. A check of their respective manifestos, including the shaky Cummingburg Accord, would reveal all the lofty plans they have on paper. They fool the people into believing that given their military, police, and legal backgrounds, they were the messiahs to save the nation from, quote, Rohis and the PDP's ineptitude, end of quote, at crime fighting. up to a recent press conference, knowing he was not being truthful, Mr. Harmon repeated this rubbish. Quote, "The administration has a plus in the sense that it boasts of many officials who are security experts," end of quote. This was trumpeted by Harmon, who labeled himself immodestly as one of the many security gurus in the Granger administration. Well, since this is so, the question many people are asking is, what are these security experts doing about the safety and security of our citizens? Suffice it to say that all 5 components of Granger's security strategy is replete with the same element the PPPC was implementing through the Ministry of Home Affairs under the minister who they so badly wanted to see leave. The Granger-led coalition is now reaping the whirlwind, having supported the criminal underworld overtly and covertly, while in the opposition, given legal representation to several criminals, and spoken in their defense in the National Assembly and other public fora. Now that they're in the government, they're singing a different tune. Quote, "We will root out crime wherever it exists," end of quote. Quote, "We will take the oxygen out of the criminal enterprise," end of quote. We heard all of this before, didn't we? The claim that the 2 a.m. curfew is only one of the elements of their makeshift, hurriedly put together anti-crime strategy is an attempt to throw dust in the eyes of the nation. As the night follows the day, it is clear that sections of the media will continue to offer excuse after excuse for every criticism made by the PDP of the de facto government, and more so of Ramjatan's failure to present a doable crime prevention and crime detection plan to match that of the PVPCs. To attack the PVP on the one hand and to praise the APNU AFC on the other will get us nowhere in the search to achieve this national endeavor. Now that Ramjatan is where Rohi was some time ago, he must face what Rohi faced, especially in view of the fact that unlike Rohi, who had a fully Government of Guyana funded public safety and security plan and an IDB funded citizen security program too, Ramjatan has neither of the two. Except plenty talk and empty promises emanating from a clinically truncated and degutted Ministry of Home Affairs, hugged by a threesome and now a mere shadow of what it was less than 2 months ago. Granger and Harmon has effectively given Ramjatan a basket to fetch water. The dastardly and criminal-minded act of Justice Nicole Lapierre and her husband Mohammed Chan, and the failure of the minister to respond adequately to cries for help is an indictment of the effectiveness of this ministry. Cynicism was taken to its height when the Starbuck News in its editorial said that the former Minister of Home Affairs appears to be, quote-unquote, an expert on what is Guyanese. And why shouldn't he be? Are we to accept that the sole experts on what is Guyanese are ensconced at the Starbuck News? According to Rohi, one thing is clear in all of this, and that is Ayman Barnya and Ayman no Ayman Yard. The PDP rejects the futile attempt to change the nature of the discourse from the real objective of the decision, that is, to enforce the 2 o'clock curfew in order to curb the spiraling crime rate. Nor will the party accept the attempt by Starbuck News to shift the goalposts by diverting the public's attention away from Ramjatan's less than stellar performance. Finally, I challenge the Sabbath News to try to convince the many angry Guyanese in general and the relatives and families in particular who have suffered as a result of the 38 serious crimes in a single month, and their losses and sufferings, and that their losses and sufferings amount to what was described as a mere speck in Mr. Ramjatan's eye, compared to the big picture and the all-embracing approach by the PVPC administration to fight crime and violence and to entrench citizen security in our country. If the Starbuck News is of the view that Ramjatan's speck in the eye is forgivable, at least by them, it would serve them well to heed the words of the great Jamaican singer John King, who in his song asks, "How many more, O Jah?" Thank you.
Yes, John. Maybe John.
Okay. Next, press statement. The People's Progressive Party has observed with shock and dismay the ruthless and highly discriminatory manner in which the Granger de facto administration has launched punitive investigations, audits at certain Amerindian villages and communities. From a total of 187 Amerindian villages and communities, the Granger-led de facto government has specifically targeted 18 villages and communities to conduct these highly sensationalized investigation audits. Interestingly, the chosen 18 Amerindian villages and communities are all known to be supportive of the PPP. It is obvious, therefore, that the Granger administration has specifically targeted these villages and communities to be audited and investigated because they're not supportive of the APNU-AFC, and the coalition have opted to do so in a more discriminatory, high-handed, and insensitive manner. The PPP wishes to emphasize that the People's Affairs must be conducted on the principles of transparency and accountability, but when practice must not be done in a politically discriminatory manner. If there is to be audits, it must be done across the board and without fear or favor, affection or ill will. To pick and choose is to invite suspicion. It is noted that among the pro-PPP villages targeted in Region 9 are Taushida in the Karasabay district, Potinarno in South Central, Waweta in North Rupununi, Kurukubaru in Region 8, and Moraikabay in the Maikoni River in Region 5. It is opposite to note that there are several other villages and communities who, because of their political leanings towards the APNU-AFC coalition, have been intentionally bypassed and will not be audited. These include Maranao in the deep south of the Rupununi, Surama, the village of Sydney Alikok in the north, and Baitun in south central of the Rupununi, all in Region 9. Keiko and Isinaru in the upper and middle Mazaruni, respectively. If, as was publicly said by a government official, that the investigations audit will not deter the holding of elections of Amerindian village councils and Tushaus, then it is important to note that according to the Amerindian Act, after the elections, and provided there is a new incoming village council and Tushau, the outgoing village council and Tushau are expected to do an official handing over of the updated records of all incomes and expenditures and all other records of other official transactions done by the outgoing council. And so the question is, What is all the fuss and big publicity about surrounding these investigations audits of some Amerindian villages and communities, and why similar audits and investigations are not being done in other villages and communities, especially in light of the statement by Joseph Harmon to the effect that there will be no holy cows in the execution of these audits investigations? The answer is obvious to all decent and fair-minded persons. It is all mere double talk and part and parcel of the APN News, AFC's pretense at a cleanup campaign to show the PPP in a bad light and to rubbish its achievements. This is a perfect example of what is good for the goose is not good for the gander.
There you are there, two statements. Now we do questions. Who will first?
All right. Comrade, yes, we keep hearing about this violent crime and spiraling crime. The police recently issued a statement which seemed to suggest that there is no spiraling crime. For example, robberies have gone down, but the murders, the same murders that you said should be separated, have gone up. The unruly murders that have gone up, but armed robberies have gone down during the same period that we say crime has spiraled. How do you justify that?
I don't have to justify anything for the police. The police have to give their own explanation. But as a former Minister of Home Affairs, I know that there is a distinction between crimes and serious crimes. For example, one of the more prevalent crimes in a division is break and enter larceny. It happens all over the place. But we're talking mainly about serious crimes with the use of a firearm, and in which person's life and limb is either threatened, harmed, or taken. So when we talk about spiraling crime, we're talking about serious crimes in which the use of a firearm is most frequent and in which a person's life is under threat.
And there is the statement, sir, that some of these crimes are being initiated by members of the PPP to make the administration look bad.
Well, whoever I saw Harmon picked to something like that, and I was rather taken back by that because he has to provide the evidence. I heard he made mention about intellectual authors, and they know who are behind these things, as though creating a scenario that they are politically inspired. Well, if Mr. Harmon or anyone in the office of the president, particularly because that's from where the statement emanated, let him provide the evidence that any member of the PPP, leadership or otherwise, are involved in this. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I believe it is nonsense and it is just a question of politicking and trying to create dragons in the sky.
Next.
Everybody gone.
Mr. Rudy, Mr. Good morning, Joe Paul, and yes. How do you feel with the ruling by the Chief Justice on the presidential terms foundation?
No, let me deal with the statements first, and then we can go on to the statement. Any other question on this?
Yes, this.
You know, I made a statement last week and I'll repeat it here again. There are some journalists who come to my press conferences not to deal with what I have read on behalf of the PPP, but to deal with what they would want to deal with. I don't have a problem with you dealing with what you want to deal with, but please, there are issues that are current that I have raised in my press statements. These are current issues. And in every statement that the PPP issues, it makes reference to statement issued by leading people, officials in the government.
Yeah, let's
So, yeah, I would like to take you down the road of the audits, sir, in the Amerindian communities, you said. And you said that, I'm not sure if I'm right, but you said the only communities being audited are those communities that are supportive of the PPP.
That's what I said.
Is there any evidence that those communities that might have been supportive of the AFC being audited, or this audit is far-reaching?
No, there's no evidence to that effect. But there's clear and incontrovertible evidence that those villages where people voted overwhelmingly in favor of the PPP in the last elections, that those are the villages that are being targeted. I mentioned Surama, for where Mr. Ali Kok is. That has been overlooked. And there are many others in that category which are not being audited or investigated.
But why should there be a problem?
Well, I don't know,
counts, no, what I mean is, listen, if there is to be an audit and everything is above board, no problem, check. If there might be something shady, then there is need for concern for the kind of action that you seem to be wanting to take now. Are you suggesting that there might have been shady behavior on the part of these communities that supported the PPP? You know, that somebody fiddled the books, that somebody took money they shouldn't have taken and do that?
No, I'm not suggesting that. All I'm saying is you can't pick and choose, like if you're a bowl of spaghetti, that you're going to take this and you're going to take that. Why is it that those villages that are supportive of the APNU-FC coalition have not been audited? You see, the audit, or the audits that are currently going on nationwide, are being cast in a context. Now we're hearing that corruption courts are being set up. All of this is a psychological warfare. It's part and parcel of psychological warfare that the administration of Mr. Granger and his cohorts are creating in order to make somebody feel guilty about not doing anything at all. So it's the context and the brouhaha in which these audits are being sold in the public that is creating this interest on the part of onlookers. Why are they going after villages that are supportive of the PPP and not going even to one that is supportive of the government? It shows clearly that there's a bias. It shows clearly there's a bias. And any audit that's being done in that way would arouse suspicions and would make people ask questions. Why is it you're going there and not going there? So the question I would turn around now to ask whether the villages that they choose to overlook are probably the villages where there is some issues. And so they choose to overlook those villages in favor of doing villages for political reasons, of which they could get more capital. They're not going to get any capital out of doing villages that are sympathetic to them, but they can get capital out of doing villages that are sympathetic to the PPP. So it's not really that anything is, shady in those villages. It's the political capital and the contribution of that capital to the total picture that is being created that something is rotten in the kingdom of Denmark.
But where they get all these auditors from? They didn't have these auditors before. You're talking about a lot of auditors, state auditors to edit all them things, home affairs, I hear the editing home affairs, GRA, housing, you name it, they got auditors for that. And now auditors for 178 villages. Where they come from, Chief?
No, it's not. I don't think it's all 178 they're auditing.
No, 18.
They're auditing 18, and of the 18,
1-8?
yeah, all of those are PVP. That's the point they're making. But that makes it even more suspicious. That makes it even more suspicious because if you choose 18 out of the 187 or whatever the case may be, just for political reasons, it shows that you have a political intent. Now you ask the question where these auditors coming from. Legally speaking, it's the Auditor General's office that is legally entitled to audit any government agency and department, or audits such as this. But you and I know that without going through a bidding process, persons have been hired to do audits, and questions have been raised about the legitimacy and due process that was used to hire these persons to do these audits. But it's even though we are operating like Eddie Murphy and these people in blood at sundown, and last train on Gun Hill, in order to achieve our objectives. I see these young people laughing, they won't know about those things, only me would.
That's why we laugh.
You know any movies? They know what them, they don't with them.
No, well, they would see them when they were first released. They would see them afterwards. Like they wouldn't know Benny King when he came here to the Globe Center, but they would hear about Benny King later on.
Mrs. Rodney, just need some clarification. Did you say that the strategies as laid out by President Reagan, the 5 strategies to tackle crime?
No. Let me correct you. In the draft strategy that he presented to Ramjatan to go refine and implement. In the strategy, that draft strategy, there are 5 components. And in the 5 components, we noticed that they're replete with elements that closely I'm not accusing anybody of plagiarizing. I'm just saying that they closely resemble those that were being implemented by the PPP.
My question is, you spoke about the anti-corruption code, which you would consider a safeguard against corruption.
Which who would consider as a safeguard against
It
corruption?
would generally be considered.
Who? You?
Anybody.
No, man, I can't come here and make those statements that anybody would consider this.
Well, it's being promoted as an anti-corruption safeguard.
Being promoted by the government.
Exactly. So, would you say that you are against the idea?
I have no comment to make on that at this stage. So let us wait and see what will come from that.
Let's move on. Any other question on the based on the statements? Right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Jim Paul, iNews. How do you see the ruling by the Chief Justice on the presidential terms limit?
I could see it like Jimmy Cliff.
Yeah, I guess you clearly know. Sir, since we gone off, when is the PPP likely to enter Parliament, having determined the members of Parliament, the possible opposition leader, and the possible deputy speaker?
Well, I saw something in the newspaper the other day in Guyana Times where it said that 2 persons in the PPP were tapped for these 2 positions, that is the deputy speaker and the chief whip. And he even went so far as to say that the executive committee, the central committee endorsed this. It's not true. That's not true.
But when did-
We have identified a candidate to be our chief whip. But insofar as the deputy speaker is concerned, that's a far cry from the truth.
Will you tell me when you plan to go into Parliament?
No, we haven't made a decision to that effect just yet.
What they said, sir, is that
It is said by whom?
well, I hear it by
Them
people in
boys?
Apio. No, them boys and son not me. But it is widely believed, sir, and they're talking about people in the government, even some among the PPP, that you're likely to go to Parliament by the end of this month, primarily because you want to be a part of the budget discussion when the budget is presented. That you want to have a say in whether Parliament would be prorogued, whether Parliament would go into recess, sorry. And you want to have a bite at this recent bill that seeks to restrict the president's benefits, I think is it. So you're likely to go by the end of this month on Thursday, the 30th? 30th. Tell me, Ron.
You know, I sometimes wonder when I hear some journalists talk about what they hear based on their contacts in the PPP and all these things. I wonder whether it's flying a kite to make us believe that they have contacts in the PPP or there's a deep truth in the PPP, you know, which
I got
finds out
contacted the PPP.
misinformation. So you better be careful with how you're exposing your contacts.
I ain't exposed them yet.
Yeah,
You don't want to make
exposing-
contacts?
No, don't say that. People might misconstrue that.
Yeah, but you're going to Parliament on the 30th, Chief?
No, I can't say that in any definitive manner.
Is there a position within the party or a growing position, sir, to have you enter Parliament by the 30th?
There's no position. No
Right.
position meaning there is a position,
Yeah, right.
but that position will not be disclosed. Will, or I should put it more positively, that position will be disclosed at the appropriate time. So there is a position.
Next. Any
Sir?
other question?
Just a clarification, you're
What's the other one? What?
You're going on the 30th?
Yes.
Yeah, just clarification, by now you're to submit to that list that you called.
Yeah.
Alright. And it was accepted.
If it was accepted, well, I haven't heard anything otherwise. Why is there a view that it would
No, I
might
just
not be
asked
accepted? That would contribute to further speculation that it wasn't accepted and now
I
what happened with the PPP and people will start crying crocodile tears and or would it make more news?
I just asked that question.
But sir, have you been discussing the bills that were passed in Parliament in your absence? Within the party, have you been discussing them? And have you adopted a position that you are going to go to Parliament with to have a say on some of these bills that have been passed?
When we go to Parliament, as I said before, we will go to Parliament to deal with matters that we have an interest in. There's a slew of matters that are slated for debate. I also understand that the Parliament is likely to go through its recess.
With your support?
Well, I don't know about that, but let's keep our fingers crossed.
But the 30th, sir, that sounds like a nice date. I can't help but coming back to it.
I don't know about the 30th. The 30th is what, a Friday?
And what was it? A Thursday.
No, maybe it's Holy Thursday.
Sir, what's President Donald Ramataya's reason for not entering Parliament this time around? We know he's not going, so we can say why he's
But
not.
I saw former President Ramatata at a press conference in this very room,
I didn't come.
at which there was a number of journalists there and they asked a number of questions.
I don't know. You tell me why you say he ain't going.
I don't know, I think he's the best person to answer that question.
We didn't talk with him. We didn't talk about
He
it.
may have spoken to me and his other colleagues here, but we don't believe in sending tales out to school.
We know why Ms. Harper not going. We know why.
Why don't you check with the deep throat?
Let's move on. Any other questions? If not, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Near his friend will